Hello, everyone, and welcome to the FarmHouse. I'm Candace Wierzbowski.
And I'm Stephanie Spiker.
So, Steph, you and I are maybe not young women. Well, you kind of are. I don't think I am. But I don't think anyone would consider either of us to be older women. But ideally, hopefully one day we will be. So do you ever think about what you want to be doing when you're older? And I'm talking about in your 60s, 70s, 80s.
I don't know if I've thought about it that much. I feel like I jokingly tell people that I already have grandma hobbies, which none of these are necessarily bad things, but they are specifically things that my grandmother personally loved to do. Mm-hmm. I love reading, and I also like to crochet. And those are pretty much in my grandma's later years when she was still with us. The main things she did. Oh, and she played cards, which I already also do.
Okay.
So I'm like, I feel like if I just turn into my late grandmother, I honestly, that's fine with me.
You're going to age into your true self.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you call them like grandma hobbies, right? Because there has always been this notion that, you know, once you hit a certain age, you're supposed to do certain things, have certain hobbies. You know, it's like you turn a certain age and all of a sudden it's just cruise ships and canasta and maybe taking the grandkids for ice cream. And life can certainly be those things once you get into those years, if you want them to be. But it can be more. You can be active and adventurous. And that brings me to this week's guest, Fran Severn. Fran is a writer and an equestrian whose passion for horses inspired her to write Riders of a Certain Age, your guide for loving horses midlife and beyond. So Fran grew up in Baltimore, where, as you can imagine, horses are a little scarce. But that didn't stop her from becoming interested in horses, and when she grew up, she got into broadcast journalism, where she began covering the Kentucky Derby and other horse-related features. And from there, it was just a hop, skip, and a jump before she was riding and then eventually buying her first horse. So her career has taken her all over the place, including across the Atlantic, where she learned about English dressage, among other things. But she has always come back to horses. And now she's become focused on encouraging women of a certain age to get in the saddle and embrace their love of all things equine. They're tossing aside some preconceived notions of what women of a certain age can or want to do, and I can only hope that I'm the same way when I get to be that age. So let's bring in Fran and hear what she and some of these women have been doing. Fran, welcome to the FarmHouse.
Thank you for inviting me.
Great. So why don't you tell me about your personal journey with horses, from covering the Kentucky Derby to acquiring your first horse and beyond?
I grew up in downtown Baltimore. No horses down there, but I think loving horses is in your DNA, and I always wanted horses in my life. I did not get a chance to ride at all until I was out of college, and I had a job in Steubenville, Ohio. But at the county park nearby in West Virginia, they had riding lessons. So I would go and ride. And then my second job was in Louisville, Kentucky. I had been offered a really nice job in Ohio, but this job was in Louisville, and it's Louisville. So I went there and I rode. I worked for a radio station, the 50,000 watt clear channel voice of WHAS Louisville. And as part of that, I was able to cover the Derby and a lot of events at the horse park, and took lessons, got my first horse. My husband was in the Air Force. We got sent to England. That was fun. And spent 6 years there, and that's where I discovered dressage. And then when I got back, as with many people, life, family, career got in the way. And I didn't really get a chance to ride seriously until I was well into my 50s. And at that point, yes, your riding instructor can tell you about sitting on a horse and leads and, all that stuff. But there's a lot of other questions. Can I do this? Physically, things change as you're a little older. And finances, does your family support you? All that. And I couldn't find any really good information that I felt was reliable. So I began to do my own research, and that turned into a book called Riders of a Certain Age, Your Guide to Loving Horses Midlife and Beyond. And it covered all of those things. It was a lot of fun to write. And everything I did, I was able to back up professionally. So if I was talking about health, I was able to dig up people that could actually do this. anything dealing with the horses. I would have my veterinarian or a farrier. The part about long-term care and what happens when you're gone. Peter Eckebert, who's one of the chief counsels for one of the big equine welfare organizations, he actually read it and kind of tweaked it so that it was accurate but was also readable. So those are the things that I did. And I followed that with a book called Creating Your Journey, which is kind of a workbook for riders. Riders is general, and Creating Your Journey, you write down a little more detail. And they're both written a little bit tongue-in-cheek. The chapter about whether or not you should buy a horse is called, "But he's so pretty." And, talking about what clothing you wear. I mean, what other book is going to give you the history of the sports bra? So it's serious, but it's factual, but it's not a textbook. Then I've written 2 other books. One was in response to all of the terrible barn fires that happened last summer, and that is simply called Barn Fires. It is amazingly easy for a fire to start and amazingly easy to pretty much eliminate the threat. And as one who has lived through a barn fire, don't use box fans. I don't want anybody to go through that again. We did not lose any horses, but it still was a nightmare. And then the last book I just came out with a few months ago, it's called Barn Hacks. All the little tips and tricks and stuff around the barn. And I thought, oh, I'll do something quick and dirty. It'll take me a few weeks, 18 months later. But I just hung around all the different websites, social media sites, archives, talking to people. And I've got over 1,000 ideas kind of broken into categories. So that anything from how to clean and store your blankets and saddle pads to fighting flies and other undesirable critters and everything in between. So that's what I've been doing.
Okay, very busy.
Yes.
So, it's interesting that you said you were looking around for resources when you began riding again in middle age, and that there wasn't much out there, which, if someone's not really looking closely, they might think, well, why would there be resources out there? How many women of that age are really riding? But that's not the case, is it?
That was one of the things that I discovered. I can't give you a hard, fast number, but I aggregated all of the different surveys and organizations that break some things down demographically, and just what I saw in the groups I belong to. And it's pretty clear that the fastest growing group in the recreational horse world is women 55 plus.
Wow.
60 and older. I was at the Southern Equine Expo down in Murfreesboro, Tennessee in February. Neat bunch, small expo, but really nice. And a lady came up to me. She was 82 years old and had just taken her first lesson.
Wow.
Now, in conjunction with the book, I have a Facebook group called, interestingly enough, Riders of a Certain Age. We have 31,000 people worldwide, and a lot of it is people going, oh my God, I'm finally taking a lesson. Oh my God, I'm doing this. I never thought there was a huge, huge support group. And an awful lot of them are in their 70s. We get them, they start to join when they're in their 40s and 50s, but we've got people that are, I'm 72 and he's a young horse, but I'm working with a good trainer and this is really exciting. And it's just fabulous that people are finding it, and the reasons they're getting into it is fascinating.
Right. Yeah. And let's talk about the riders that are coming into this sport for the first time. Like you said, the body changes over time, and it's natural to perhaps feel a little apprehensive about doing certain physical activities, but it's also natural to be nervous about trying anything new for the first time, no matter where you are in life. So I guess, what advice do you have for women that are in these positions? How do you get over that fear and find your confidence that, yes, you can go out and you can ride?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the researchers have found is interesting, because it was always presumed you hit 65, you're going to play canasta, maybe take your kids on a Disney cruise, and not do much else. And I think maybe because some of the researchers are starting to hit our age, they're discovering that that's not the case. We can do pretty much everything. So a lot of it is, can I do this? Am I mentally able to? And again, the research shows that by and large, yes, you have senior moments, that's part of normal. But that the curiosity and the willingness that, you take a deep breath because you are, dealing with something that has its own mind frequently. But if you find, I think one of the things is to find the right people to work with. Maybe you've got other friends who ride. That's part of it. So that you find somebody who says, yeah, sure. We specialize in classes. I always tell people if they're really new and they're really nervous, go to a stable that works with kids. You don't want to go to a high-end dressage stable or a competition stable or a stable where everybody's doing barrel racing and long, complicated trail rides. That's out of your comfort zone. But if you go someplace that they work with kids, then the kids aren't having any expectation. You're just somebody else that likes horses. And those classes are usually built around having fun, teaching games, and ask instructors. When I started this, I went to several social media groups that are for instructors. And I said, how do you feel about riding older beginners or people coming back or whatever? And with one exception, they all said, we love you. There's no drama. You're willing to listen to us. You'll take the time to get it right. And you pay on time. We like this. And I think that's part of it, is that most people my age, you're young, most people that are riding who are older, they don't want the drama. They're not really interested in competition by and large. They want to have fun. They want to spend time with the horse and do a trail ride and maybe do a little competition. So I think it's normal to be apprehensive because this is an entirely different world. It's different language, it's different clothing, it's different expectations. I mean, I still have a chart in my office that has the parts of the horse. One of the things that can also help is at the Pony Club, which has always been assumed to be for kids. They have now branched out and are actively recruiting older riders.
That's great.
Partly because that's a good source of volunteers, but also that there's no pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's a wonderful development.
Awesome. So, like you said before, for a while there seemed to be this misconception that once you hit a certain age, that's it. You're not going to be physically active. And that's just simply not the case. So what are some misconceptions out there about older riders? And how are you and others challenging those misconceptions?
I think one of the misconceptions is you're too old to learn. And we do have to think differently because we haven't been in a learning situation for probably a long time. So, there is, it might take us a little longer to figure it out. But once we've got it, it's locked in. The other misconception, not the misconception, the other thing you find is that we tend as we get older to stay in patterns. We've always done it this way. We've always thought this way. And that's the way it is. And with riding, it's a little difficult because you have to keep trying different things. You have to keep your brain kind of fluid. Is this the way it's always been done? Well, maybe I need to tweak it. And that's in life in general. We're older. We're used to doing this. We don't feel like thinking anymore. And you get into a certain extent of my mind is made up. Don't bother me with facts. One of the cases, I'll give you a practical horse case, is deworming your horse. And it was always every 6 weeks, we use this type and we use that type and we deworm and we deworm. And now more and more evidence is showing that long-term use of dewormers can cause problems. Some horses get colic. And they've started to trace it, the veterinarians and the different groups that trace this thing. And they're saying there seems to be a pretty strong correlation. What they're finding is better is that you do a fecal count of the horses and you see which horses have worms and which don't. Because you can have, and it's happened to me, we had 8 horses in the same pasture. 2 of them had a high fecal count, the others didn't. So let's take care of those 2 horses, then the others. But you will find a lot of people, be they barn owners and boarders who try to protect themselves from being accused of not caring for the horses, or people that this is what they've always done. They don't want to hear that. This is what we've always done. I don't care what the evidence is. This is what I'm going to do. And that's probably the biggest challenge, is to convince yourself that, yes, you can figure this out. Physically, yeah, we have to listen carefully. You're going to tell your doctor, I want to do this, and he's going to tell you you're nuts. And you listen very carefully, you nod your head, and then you do what you want. I've had both knees replaced, and my doctor knows me because he's done other work, and his kids ride. And it had been 8 weeks since the second knee replacement. And he said, go ahead and ride. Just don't do dumb things. Know your limits. And I said, well, I don't jump anymore. I was never that good anyway. I said, dressage and trail rides. Although the worst accident I ever had was in a dressage arena during a test when the idiot that owned the barn ran up behind the horse with a wheelbarrow. Marcus jumped to the side to see what was going on behind him, and I went flying. So nothing is safe. But to know your limitations, again, with muscle memory, it may take us longer to lock it in, and we may have to make adjustments for our physical overall condition. That's things you tell your instructor so that they can work with you on that. Most instructors want to. They don't want to lose a good customer who pays on time. So those are things that you have to be aware of what you can and can't do. And take your time with that. And then you'll progress. The great thing with riding is every day you can progress a little bit.
That's great. I love that there seems to be two sides of this, right? Like there's the physical side, but then there's also the mental side, because I feel like just maintaining that sort of neuroplasticity is so important. And so to be challenged in that way and, finding new ways to approach same old problems is great.
One of the things the research shows very strongly, and it doesn't have to do with riding, it has to do with just being an active person. If you keep your brain active and you do as much or as little as you can physically, you have a better outlook on life. Your quality of life is better. You will be able to deal with the curveballs that life feeds you, especially as you're older. You are going to lose friends. You may lose a spouse. You may have to downsize. You may have physical things that you can't take care of, but you've got a better mental attitude. I go to the local gym. It's in Hockessin, Delaware. And that's Hockessin, not Hockessin, although that's how it's spelled. And they have an athletic club that is fabulous. And they have a lot of swim classes that, or water aerobics classes. They have some group exercise and weight classes. And the one class I go to Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings at 7:15, it's called Everyday Strength. And it's a good warm up and some weights and some this and that. One of the ladies, whose name is Carolyn, she's kind of a little lady. She's 89 years old, and she's keeping up with us. And some of the heavier weight classes and the aqua aerobics classes. This place has a physical therapy attachment. So a lot of these people that are showing up, double canes, they're in the wheelchair, they get in the water, and they keep going. And there's one lady, she has a vision issue that her dog comes, beautiful golden shepherd, and he lays there and watches the pool and watches her while she swims. So these are people that are, inspirational, first off, but they're so in tune with life and living. There's the Jimmy Buffett line, I'd rather die while I'm living than live while I'm dead. And actually, I have that on my wall as well. And I think, be it riding or walking or taking barge cruises, these river barge cruises, and that are really fun. If you can find a way to stay active, being involved in a book club, the local charities that you can be involved in. I used to have a big old yellow lab named Beauregard. And the local grade school had a program that I go in 1 or 2 mornings a week and sit on the floor in the second grade, and the kids would come read to him. Because these were kids that didn't read well or were a little shy, and Bo would just sit there and love it. So even doing that, I think that makes such a huge difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you also address in your book that, one can go on having horses in their life, even if they're not able to ride. So can you speak a little more to that?
Yeah,
for those
there's
people?
a movement that's the non-ridden equine. And it started in England. The lady, and I'm sorry, I can't recall her name right now. She was a serious competitor, and her horse was injured, and it was a career-ending injury. And I think she might have been able to ride a little, but a lot of time in the saddle, done. And most people would get another horse. And she thought, I love Kez so much. I don't want to do that. What else can I do? And she began to discover the things that you can do on ground, just hanging out, walking with them. You want a lead line, doing, the horse agility classes and liberty things. And that became a movement in England. She got a tremendous amount of horrible negative feedback. If you don't have a horse, what's the point? It just, you know, but eventually she had chapters all over the world. And the harassment got so bad in England, she shut down the British chapter. But if you go online and
Oh,
write,
no.
Google in non-ridden equine or Facebook non-ridden equine, the chapters will come up. But yeah, that is becoming very much a thing that you're now seeing equine agility courses. So it's an adaptation of dog agility that sometimes they're ridden, sometimes they're at liberty, sometimes they're lead line. And actually, as much as I love riding, I really want to find some place where I can do more of that. I don't have horses right now. I lost both of mine a couple years ago. And just going to a place for an hour or so lesson, you really need to spend more time to really get that mind melding. But there's a lot of people now that is becoming very active. There is an International Horse Agility Association, and you can buy or go online and set up the obstacles. And then they have virtual competition. You videotape it and send it in.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And they charge something basically to keep things going. So you can do that at all of the horse expo. Well, I go to the two big equine affairs in Ohio and Massachusetts. And I think the one in Harrisburg did it this year too, but I'm not sure. But they actually have competitions that you could be spectators. And the one in Massachusetts, there was some serious money involved there. It's like $5,000 if you won. Yay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's just fun to watch. And it's a different way of enjoying it. And I think the horses enjoy it too. You can see it. It's like, oh, this is so cool. The neat one of the things, just as with the dogs, they have the poles they have to weave, the weave poles.
Mm-hmm.
At the one in Massachusetts, there was a Frisian. So he'd go bubba boom and turn, bubba boom and turn, bubba boom and turn. And it was just marvelous to see this. So there's that. The other thing that's coming, it's called the Paddock Paradise. And this is a fairly new concept. It was started by a farrier, I believe in Britain again, who noticed that horses that were kind of outside all the time or in the wild, their hooves were much stronger than traditionally boarded horses. And he decided that was because in the wild, they're moving. They're not standing in the pasture and having food and water given to them. So he designed this thing that some of the food is here, the water's there, shelter's here, to keep moving. And that has become a very interesting movement. I know in Ireland, I know there's one, I believe there are two universities that actually have this thing set up and they're studying it academically. And I believe there's at least one in the States, which is a very different way of boarding your horse and tending to it. Now, some of these horses are still ridden. It's not like they're there and that's it, but that's a different way of spending time with your horse and dealing with your horse, which I find fascinating.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't apparently. I'll see things posted because I'm on one of the social media things that post things, and you can apparently do this if you only have a couple of acres. So it's not like you need a big area. If you're keeping your horse on an acre, then okay, you just move the way things are, where things are placed, and that keeps them moving a little bit. So it'll be interesting to follow that as it goes on over time.
It's a very interesting almost response to, I hear people sometimes say like, oh, why do you put shoes on horses? They don't wear shoes in the wild. It's like, well, the horses in the wild live very different lives than our domesticated horses.
When I lived down in Salisbury, Maryland, that's sand. Your horse did not need shoes. And because if it was a lot of sand, they didn't need to be trimmed quite as often. But you go by the horse. My mare, for some reason, stood oddly. It was not a conformation defect. She just stood strangely. And we wanted to stop that. So we had her on a corrective shoe. And after about 6 months, she'd balanced herself. We were taking the horses up to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, because the Gettysburg Historical Equestrian Association helps maintain the trails through the park. The Park Service doesn't have the money. So they've got people from all over the world. It's like $25 a year and it goes there. But 2 or 3 times a year, they do guided rides, which is fabulous. There's a place that's called Artillery Ridge Campground, and it's set up that you can bring horses. And it's right on the edge. So you rode that. Well, that is stone. It is granite stone. So if you're taking your horses up there, you better have boots or shoe them, because otherwise they're going to come home sore. It happened. We did not realize that we got up there. So the one horse was not shod, and he was really annoyed when we got done. So you've got to play it by the situation. And that's like a can of worms. Like, should I not wear a hard hat? Let's not go there. But yeah, it's you've got to look at what's best for the horse. And then that is, talk to your farrier. They are trained. Those people are trained. And that's a whole nother can of worms.
Right. I was also going to say thank you for clarifying the horse agility activities, because honestly, the first thing that came to my mind was the dog agility sets. And I'm like, well, they'd have to scale up. So I'm picturing these just gigantic versions of what the dogs
some
do.
Of them
I'm like,
are.
I don't know if it's a one-to-one comparison.
No, some of them are. There is a competition for police officers, for mounted police officers. And it's huge. And a few years ago, the national competition happened to be here up in Delaware where I live. So we went over to it. And a lot of it is like, in the dog thing, they have to run through the tunnel. Well, this thing was this giant framework that was covered. It was high enough that the rider still had several feet above, but it was still going through an enclosed area. One of the things that at the county park here, they've built an obstacle trail ride. An obstacle trail. So you can just ride the trail, or if you get to an obstacle, you can work through it. But yeah, the police thing, I took a de-spooking clinic taught by one of the guys that won one of these. And by the time it was over, we had to walk across a little wooden bridge that had smoke coming out from it. They had to walk across a teeter-totter. They had to go through the what do they call it? The car wash, the noodles hanging down, they had to push aside.
Yeah.
She had to walk around his police car, which was idling with the lights and siren going. And I forget what all else. But he said, you don't have to do any of these, but you never know what you're going to run into. And it was fascinating. And I was sufficiently interested. I wanted to join the Maryland Search and Rescue Group. And they'd sent me the information, but they only start training every 18 months. They'd already started training, and they weren't going to let me back up. And by the time the next course started, she was going to be over their minimum wage. They didn't want any horses that were older than, I believe, 12, and she would have been like 14. But they sent me the list of everything. And the only thing I couldn't figure out how to simulate was standing quietly while a helicopter landed 300 feet away. I did not think the local airport was going to let me try this. But it was fascinating. Take a step and freeze. Take a step and freeze. And these are all things you can do with your horse without competing. You can do it on the ground. You can do it other ways. And it's just, I think traditionally we've been so tied to horses means showing. And I'm so happy to see, largely I think because of us, our age group is not that interested in the ribbons. I like my ribbons, but I don't live for that. And I think largely because we're interested in a different kind of relationship. We're living our dream of having and riding a horse, that we're getting away from that pressure.
Okay. I mean, it seems like the book has been extremely well received. You won an award. It was the best inspirational book at the Equus International Film and Arts Festival. So congratulations. And I believe you said there's an audiobook coming out soon.
I am talking to the people tomorrow. By the 1st of July, I'll start recording it. I'll put on my radio voice and sound official. And if God willing and the stars align, it should be out by September.
Great.
Right now, it is available as you can buy it from me. Please do. ridersofacertainage.com online. Or if you go to Horse and Rider, they have the ebook version. And so you can get it as an ebook, and then the audiobook will be coming out, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
There we are. And then the Book of Barn Hacks, which I absolutely love, that is also available at ridersofacertainage.com. And when you order it, I'll even autograph it.
Awesome. I was just about
Someday
to
it'll be
say,
worth
there's more
something.
than just the horses there. I guess just, can you give us, what's your favorite barn hack from that book?
Everybody asks that, and it's really hard because it kind of depends on the situation. This whole thing got started when, when you have the tape, the clear plastic tape, and you can never find the end of the
Yes.
blasted tape. And somebody said, you take the little plastic things for like bread bags. You take that little square thing and you put that on the bottom of the tape, and then you can find it. And I thought, son of a gun. And I don't think that ended up in the book, actually. But
there can always be a sequel.
No, I swore no, and I still have a thing called other hacks. One of the things that I loved is if your horse has to have his leg iced and they're usually not cooperative, the cone of shame you get for your dog. Okay, you take that, you put that around the leg so that the open part, and you put some cloth or something around the leg itself, but then you can fill that with ice or ice packs.
Oh, okay.
And I looked at that and I thought, that's so freaking brilliant. So that
so
one I really
simple.
like, having had horses that have needed that kind of treatment. The other thing I found that was very funny is that your horse has an abscess and you want to pack it with something that's acidic to help pull out the abscess. And honest to God, I found this on a German website. Of course, you use sauerkraut. And you put the sauerkraut on the hoof and you pack it. And, the sauerkraut would only in Germany would they think of this. And apparently it works. So I think those are kind of the things that you find. It's just like, this has to be real because I couldn't make this up.
That is great. I feel like we're going to have to link in the show notes. We have so many recipes for sauerkraut here at Lancaster Farming.
Oh, God, yes.
We covered a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what I also have on the chapter about flies, bugs, and other critters is there are 9 recipes for fly spray. And some of them are all natural stuff. Some of them involve various chemicals that I made sure that you can use them safely, so that you can kind of try your own.
All right, cool. Well, Fran, this kind of brings us to the end of the interview, but I have one more question for you. It's the one we ask everyone. What does it mean to you to be a woman in ag?
I grew up in the city, and my mother had a garden, whoopee. But to be here, living over in Hooghessen, and I look out on a field and deer go by. We have 3 foxes that come and are courting my dog. The bird, this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be living in, to a greater or lesser extent, in some type of nature, in kind of helping nature. My next door neighbor has a lovely vegetable garden. The first thing I did when I moved in 2 years ago was two giant raised flower beds that are full of pollinators. And they are just going crazy this year. Last year was the first year they were fine. Now they're going crazy. And that's not running a farm or raising livestock, but it's still contributing to the earth, if you want to get esoteric about it. And that's just such great satisfaction that I'm trying to give back something. And that may sound grandiose, but there it is.
Awesome. That's a great answer to it.
Oh,
all right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed this immensely. Thank you.
That was a really fun conversation you and Fran had. I enjoyed listening to it a lot.
She was great, yeah.
And she used the word inspiring at one point. And honestly, I do feel like it is inspiring to hear of older women just totally like committing to something new in life, a new hobby, a new passion, for them, horse riding. And it is something, as you mentioned, neither of us are really old, but like, I don't know, we're not young. I just turned 30, which I know is still young. But I have thought a little bit about not wanting to get so caught up in like the busyness of life that I'm not trying new things or finding hobbies and passions, you know?
Right.
So it's so cool to hear of women who have done a lot in their life and have gotten to an older age and still decide to try something new because, yeah, I don't know, it can be scary trying new things.
It's
and like
admirable.
riding a horse is not necessarily the easiest hobby to just decide one day that you want to do.
Right. I mean, obviously it's an investment, you know, time, money, but it is something that takes some bravery. I think I've talked about this before on this podcast that I am a little horse nervous. So I can't imagine that would get easier as I get older. So,
and like the aches and pains get a little right. More. Yeah. But I also loved, Fran talked about the non-riding equine activities where it's kind of more like similar to like the dogs doing their cool courses and stuff, and you're leading a horse, but you're on the ground.
Right.
That's fascinating to me. I think horses are just beautiful animals. In general, I just love being around animals. And so that to me almost sounds more fun as someone who isn't much. I've ridden horses before because luckily for me, I have some family that have owned horses. So I've been able to ride a couple of times, but I am in no way like I'm not good with horses. I don't know how to ride a horse properly or any of that.
You're not a horse whisperer, as they say.
No way. But the idea of getting to still work with horses in a way that does not involve me actually climbing on top of it, that's intriguing to me. I love that.
Yeah. I feel like I need to go maybe try and like YouTube some of these equestrian agility competitions because I'm so glad I asked her because I was sitting there when I was talking to her feeling almost a little foolish thinking like, all I can picture in my head is just a scaled up version of what the dogs do. And it turns out that's exactly what it is. And so I think I need to see this.
It does make sense, though. I mean, horses are very intelligent. So it makes sense that you're exercising both like their mind and their body by doing agility courses with them. So, yeah, I would watch people do that for sure. Yeah. And I don't know. If I ever got the opportunity to like lead a horse through an agility course, I would definitely not say no. That sounds amazing.
It does sound fun. All right. Well, I think that wraps things up for us on Fran. But before we go, we have two announcements. The first is that we are going to be taking a break for a few weeks. We will be back in late August, rested and ready to hear more stories from women in agriculture. During that time, we will both be at Ag Progress Days.
So Ag Progress Days, if you're not familiar with it, is an outdoor ag show run by Penn State outside of State College, Pennsylvania. So if you're in the area, if you live around here, if you plan on going to Ag Progress, come and say hi to us. Lancaster Farming actually will have 2 different booths this year. And one of them, Candace and I will be hanging out at a lot because we will actually be doing some recording up there for podcasts of the future. So if you want to come and talk to us and tell your story about why you're in agriculture, please come and hang out with us at our booth.
Yeah, you can actually come and meet the whole digital team, not just us. If you've listened to more of our podcasts, you'll get to hear Eric Herlock. He does our Industrial Hemp podcast. He'll be there. If you listen to our podcast about Farmer Wants a Wife, Travis will be there. So yeah, come by. Our tent will be W10104 if you want to meet us. And then Lancaster Farming also will have an indoor tent at A301.
You would also get to meet the man behind all of the podcasts that you listen to. His name is Justin. You don't ever really hear his voice, but he works all of the magic of all of these podcasts. So come meet him too. He's fun.
And our second announcement is that we here at Lancaster Farming have a new podcast in the works. It's called Super Smart Farm Show, and it's a podcast for kids. So each episode is going to take on a question that kids might have about farming. We're going to talk about stuff like why sheep need haircuts and why there are so many different kinds of apples, stuff like that. So if you've got little ones in your life, they are going to love it. And we're going to share the trailer with you now so that you can hear a little more about what to expect from Super Smart Farm Show.
Do cows really have 4 stomachs?
Can flowers move?
Why do farms smell in the spring? Are raspberries berries?
Did chocolate milk come from brown
What's the
cows?
difference between straw and hay?
Why
do corn and roosters go?
Why do so many colors of apples?
What's up with all those words for poop on the farm?
Whoa, whoa, whoa! One at a time. Sounds like you guys have a lot of questions about farms. Well, guess what? Here at the Super Smart Farm Show, we've got the answers. Join us each week as we dive into topics every little farmer wants to know about. We'll explore what it's like to take care of animals like cows and sheep and pigs and chickens, even bees. We'll climb up into the tractors and harvesters and other farm machinery you see out there in the fields. And we'll talk about what makes them go and what farmers did before they even existed. We'll dig into what it takes to grow the crops that ultimately make it to the store and then onto your plate. How do they make that journey? We'll get into that too. And parents, you'll be happy to know this isn't our first rodeo. Super Smart Farm Show is produced by Lancaster Farming newspaper, a trusted name in agricultural journalism since 1955. You know, back when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. All right, just kidding about the dinosaurs. But when it comes to knowing farming, we're no joke. We're ready to take on your kids' farming-related questions, and we've got decades of agricultural experience to back us up. So ask away, friends, because here at the Super Smart Farm Show, we know it's fun to ask questions and wonder about the world we live in. And we love learning about how farmers feed and take care of us. You can find Super Smart Farm Show starting July 22nd on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts, or you can listen at lancasterfarming.com. It's the Super Smart Farm Show.
So yeah, we might be taking a little farmhouse break, but there is still a lot of cool stuff you can listen to. I don't actually have kids, and yet I love listening to the episodes we're creating. They are so much fun. So really, all ages.
Thank you all for listening. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And if you really like this episode, please consider leaving us a review.
If you have any questions or thoughts about this episode or the podcast, you can email us at farmhouse@lancasterfarming.com.
You can also find us on social media at Lancaster Farming on most platforms.
Thank you again for listening and visiting us at the farmhouse. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Candace.
And we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
This episode of The Farmhouse is copyright 2025 by Lancaster Farming newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family.
It was written by Stephanie Spiker and Candace Wierzbowski. It was produced by Eric Herlock and Justin Berger. The music is by Tim Bird Shadow.